Good evening, Saints, from Trinity Christian Fellowship. Wanted to make another devotional video for you all. It is right now Wednesday evening. I just got home from work. And this one is regarding presumption. So, one thing I've seen as we all kind of grapple with this pandemic that we find ourselves in, and we kind of groan underneath the ways in which it's changed all of our lives. Almost everybody has been at the very least inconvenienced, and some much more than that. One of the things I keep seeing over and over again is this statement about when this is over, or when this is finished, when things go back to normal. A whole lot of that kind of language that I'm seeing, and I echo the sentiment insofar as, like, I do hope things get better. Obviously, there's good aspects that we've talked about as a congregation together, and certainly negative aspects. In no way, shape, or form am I saying that this disease that is spread around the globe, obviously it's been catastrophic to some people's finances. People are facing, possibly losing their homes, losing businesses. Certainly I join with everyone in groaning underneath of that. But there's other aspects, right? Again and again, when I talk to fellow Christian brothers and sisters, I hear I'm spending more time with my wife. I'm praying more, spending more time in the Word. I'm having more meaningful relationships with my children or those in my own house. And certainly we see that, what the Bible says, that God is able to work all things together for good to those who love Him. So even a terrible thing that is causing so much economic havoc and suffering and loss of life, God can simultaneously use that to help those who are His, to sanctify His children. Well, let's talk about presuming that somehow things are going to get better. I keep coming back to this text in James. James says in James 4:13, he says, "Come now." That's such a good synopsis of how James writes. "Come now, you who say." So come on over here, James says. Sit down and think about this with me. What are they saying? They're saying, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town, and we'll spend a year there, and we will trade and make a profit. Right? So this is somebody who is talking about what they're going to do for the next 24 hours or 365 days or what have you. We're gonna go to this place, and we're going to engage in business, and we're going to make a profit. James says, "Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring." Right? You're telling me about what's going to happen next year. You don't need. What insight do you have about this evening or tomorrow morning? Right? What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Right? You're like the fog on one of those beautiful cold mornings like we have here in Western Washington in the spring, where it's clear and cold, and then fog comes in the morning, and then it's just there for a little bit, and then it's gone. Right? That's what our life is like in the grand scheme of things. You're a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So, poignant words, to the point. Certainly, these words kind of carry a punch, right? I think we've all kind of been guilty at times of the sin of presumption. So this can be presuming something about myself, right? Like, I'm the captain of my own ship, and I decide what's going to happen tomorrow. I decide what's going to happen tonight. I decide what next year is going to look like. Well, there is a sense in which we're all persons, and we do have a will and cognition, and we make our own choices. But don't presume that you have the power to make your life go good or bad. You have the opportunity to make good choices, which will typically lead to your life going good. You have the opportunity to make bad choices that will lead to bad consequences. But at the end of the day, Whether we even live is in God's hands, right? And God's the one that decides um, what my tomorrow or what my next year is going to look like. Another thing that we can fall into the trap of presuming is that God owes me prosperity. This is especially true of us as Americans. Um, we American evangelicals tend to think of America as sort of something akin to Israel, right? Like America is kind of God's special country in some way, and that God owes America a return to prosperity, right? Like because we're His special country, he owes a roaring economy and widespread extravagant wealth back to us. Well, that's no such thing, right? God has no special countries, first and foremost, and He owes no country prosperity. He can choose in His mercy and in His grace to cause a country to prosper greatly, and He might allow them to continue to prosper for decades or a century or 2 centuries or 5 centuries as he wants to. But God raises up kings and nations and powers, and He removes them whenever He sees fit, right? And He doesn't owe America anything, and He certainly doesn't owe us prosperity. Another question I would kind of have in that regard is like, and again, well, let's ask the question first: was pre-COVID-19 America better than America is now? And of course I'm not talking about people unable to pay their mortgages and all of the economic fallout and all of those things. I'm not talking about economics or politics, but socially, culturally, right? Are we better now or worse? I think a real good argument to be made that we're better. So I would love for God to restore, the economic ability for people to provide for themselves and to have some sort of a financial future for themselves and help their kids go to college and save for retirement. I would love for America to return to something like that, but I don't want America to go back to exactly how it was in late 2019. Goodness no. I would rather it be something entirely different that comes out of this. If the Lord wills, right? If the Lord wills, you'll live and you'll do this or that. It is ultimately in His hands. We are referred to as fog or mist in this passage. In a similar passage in Isaiah, Isaiah refers to world empires as like flowers. Right? God clothes the meadows. He clothes the grass of the field with these flowers for a little while, and then they're gone. And I'm of course a climber and backpacker. I spend a lot of time in the Cascades in the summertime when I can, and I can tell you those beautiful flowers are there for like 5 weeks out of the year. They come, they're very, very beautiful for a short period of time, and then they're gone. And God says empires like Persia and Rome and America right now, Britain before us, like flowers, right? Very, 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 very temporary. So this passage is teaching us a lot of things. I've only hit on some of them, but it's certainly teaching us that we should not presume that God owes us anything. God is never a debtor to anyone, Paul says in Romans 11, right? Whatever it is that we receive from Him is mercy and grace, and He chooses to dole that out how he wills. So have a financial plan. Plan for tomorrow. Plan for how are you going to pay for your kid's college? How are we going to take care of these bills and those bills? And this is certainly not saying don't be financially wise. It's not saying any of that stuff, but it is saying don't presume that you are in complete command apart from God of your future, and certainly don't presume that God owes you anything. I hope that is helpful.